What happens when the world's most innovative entrepreneur sits down with one of television's most outspoken hosts? In just 32 seconds, Joy Behar would deliver the comment that would end her career on live television and shock millions of viewers around the globe. This is the exclusive inside story of last night's explosive confrontation that nobody saw coming. The Hot Topics table was buzzing with energy as the View's cameras rolled for what seemed like another typical Tuesday morning show. Whoopi Goldberg sat in her usual center seat, flanked by the familiar faces of Sarah Haynes, Alyssa Farah Griffin, Sunny Hostin, and of course, Joy Behar. The studio audience was particularly excited today because they had landed one of the biggest names in business and technology as their guest. Elon Musk walked onto the stage with his characteristic calm confidence, waving to the enthusiastic crowd before taking his seat at the curved table. The billionaire entrepreneur looked relaxed in his simple black t-shirt, a stark contrast to the colorful blazers and dresses worn by his hosts. "Welcome back to The View," Whoopi began with her warm smile. "We're here with Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, and owner of X, formerly known as Twitter. Elon, thank you so much for being here with us today." "Thanks for having me," Elon replied, his voice steady and measured. "Always good to be here and talk with you all." Sarah Haynes leaned forward with obvious excitement. "Elon, we have to start with the big news. Your Starship program just achieved another successful test flight. Can you tell us what this means for the future of space exploration?" Elon's eyes lit up as he began to explain. "Well, what we're seeing is the beginning of making life multiplanetary. This isn't just about sending a few astronauts to Mars. We're talking about creating a sustainable city on another planet. Each successful test brings us closer to that reality." The audience applauded enthusiastically, and even Sunny Hostin nodded approvingly. "That's incredible. The technology you're developing could change everything for future generations." "Exactly," Elon continued. "And it's not just about Mars. The technologies we develop for space travel have applications here on Earth. Better batteries, more efficient rockets, advanced life support systems. All of this benefits everyone." Alyssa Farah Griffin jumped in with genuine curiosity. "Speaking of benefiting everyone, your work with Tesla has really pushed the entire auto industry toward electric vehicles. Do you feel like you've accomplished what you set out to do in that space?" "We're getting there," Elon said with a slight smile. "When we started Tesla, people said electric cars would never work. They said they'd be too expensive, too slow, too unreliable. Now every major automaker is racing to catch up. That competition is exactly what we wanted. It's not about Tesla winning. It's about accelerating the transition to sustainable transport." The conversation was flowing naturally, with each host asking thoughtful questions and Elon providing detailed, passionate answers. The audience was clearly engaged, hanging on every word as he described his vision for renewable energy and space colonization. But then Joy Behar, who had been unusually quiet up to this point, decided to speak up. "That's all very nice," Joy said, her voice carrying a sharp edge that cut through the friendly atmosphere. "But let's talk about what really matters. Your little social media platform has become a cesspool of misinformation and hate speech. You've basically destroyed democracy with your reckless management." The mood in the studio shifted instantly. Elon's expression remained calm, but there was a noticeable pause before he responded. "I think that's a pretty strong characterization, Joy. We've actually increased transparency on the platform and reduced censorship. People can now see what's being moderated and why." "Transparency?" Joy's voice rose sharply. "You call allowing conspiracy theories and dangerous lies transparency? You've given a megaphone to every extremist and nutcase on the internet." Whoopi tried to interject. "Joy, maybe we should let Elon explain his." "No, Whoopi, this is important." Joy cut her off, her finger now pointing directly at Elon. "This man has blood on his hands. His platform spreads violence and hatred, and he profits from it." The studio audience fell silent. Even the camera operator seemed to pause, unsure of what was happening. Elon took a deep breath and leaned forward slightly. "Joy, I understand you're upset, but those accusations simply aren't true. We've implemented more safeguards than the platform ever had before. We've reduced bot accounts, increased verification, and made our policies clearer. If you have specific examples of—" "Oh, I have examples," Joy interrupted, her voice now reaching a fever pitch. "How about the lies about vaccines, the election misinformation, the attacks on marginalized communities? You've created a weapon of mass destruction, and you're too arrogant to admit it." Sarah Haynes looked uncomfortable and tried to redirect. "Maybe we could discuss the positive impacts of social media and how platforms can." There are no positive impacts when it comes to his platform? Joy snapped, not even looking at Sarah. It's a cancer on society, and he's the tumor. The other hosts exchanged worried glances. This was clearly not going according to plan. Sunny Hostin attempted to restore some balance to the conversation. Elon, obviously there are concerns about social media platforms and their impact on society. How do you respond to critics who say that more moderation is needed? Elon nodded appreciatively at Sunny's more measured approach. That's a fair question. The challenge is who decides what gets moderated and based on what criteria. The old system had a lot of censorship that people didn't even know was happening. We've tried to make the process more open and democratic. Democratic? Joy's laugh was bitter and harsh. You mean like how you banned journalists who criticized you? How democratic is that? That's not accurate, Elon replied, his voice still calm, but with a slight edge now. Those accounts violated our terms of service by posting private information about my family's location. That's not journalism, that's doxing, and it puts people in danger. Joy slammed her hand on the table. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You silence anyone who disagrees with you while letting actual dangerous content run wild? You're a hypocrite and a threat to free speech. The tension in the studio was now palpable. Alyssa tried one more time to calm things down. I think there are valid concerns on both sides here. Maybe we can find some common ground on the importance of both free speech and responsible moderation. But Joy wasn't finished. Her face was red with anger as she continued her attack. There is no common ground with someone who has weaponized free speech to destroy it. You've turned social media into a propaganda machine for extremists and autocrats. Elon's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. Joy, I came here to have a respectful conversation about technology and the future. You're making personal attacks based on misinformation about what we're actually doing. This isn't productive for anyone. Productive? Joy's voice cracked with outrage. You know what's not productive? Letting neo-Nazis spread their hatred on your platform while you count your money? You've betrayed everything that free speech is supposed to represent. Whoopi tried desperately to regain control. Joy, I think we need to. No, Whoopi, America needs to hear this, Joy shouted, now standing from her chair. This man is a danger to democracy, and we're sitting here treating him like some kind of hero. He's not a hero. He's a villain who hides behind technology and free speech to spread poison. The audience was now completely silent, shocked by the unprecedented outburst. Elon remained seated, his expression calm, but his eyes showing the strain of maintaining composure under such a vicious attack. I think we should take a commercial break, Whoopi said quickly, signaling to the producers. But Joy wasn't done. As the show was about to cut away, she delivered the line that would define this moment and ultimately end her television career. And another thing, she screamed, pointing directly at Elon, her face contorted with rage. You and your whole family are nothing but a bunch of con artists and frauds. Your father was a crook, your mother is a gold digger, and you're just a spoiled rich boy playing with rockets while real people suffer because of your lies and greed. The studio went dead silent. The words hung in the air like a poison cloud. Every person in that studio knew they had just witnessed something that would change television forever. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of the most shocking moment in daytime television history. Elon Musk sat perfectly still for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 3 seconds. His face showed no anger, no outrage, just a quiet sadness that somehow made Joy's attack look even more vicious and cruel. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more power than all of Joy's screaming. Joy, he said quietly, I came here to talk about making life better for everyone, about going to Mars, about clean energy, about giving people hope for the future. I never expected to be attacked like this, especially not with lies about my family. The other hosts looked absolutely mortified. Sarah Haynes had her hand over her mouth in shock. Alyssa Farah Griffin was staring at Joy with complete disbelief. Sunny Hostin looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair, but it was Whoopi Goldberg's reaction that spoke volumes. Whoopi, the veteran host who had seen everything in her decades of television, slowly turned to face Joy with an expression of pure disappointment and anger. Joy, what did you just do? She asked, her voice heavy with disgust. Joy, still standing and breathing heavily from her outburst, seemed to suddenly realize the magnitude of what she had said. The studio audience was completely silent, many with their mouths hanging open in shock. Some were already reaching for their phones to record what they knew was a historic television moment. I was just telling the truth about. Joy started to stammer, but Whoopi cut her off. The truth? Whoopi's voice rose with righteous indignation. Joy, you just attacked this man's family on live television. You called his mother names. You made personal attacks that have nothing to do with anything we were discussing. This is not who we are. Elon stood up slowly, his dignity intact despite the vicious assault he had just endured. I think it's best if I leave now, he said calmly. I'm sorry this happened, especially for the rest of you who were trying to have a real conversation. No, Elon, please don't go, Sarah Haynes pleaded, her voice breaking with emotion. Joy doesn't speak for all of us. What she said was completely unacceptable and untrue. Please stay, Sunny Hostin added, looking directly at Elon while pointedly avoiding eye contact with Joy. We can continue this conversation the right way, with respect and civility. But the damage was done. Elon shook his head gently. I appreciate that, I really do. But I won't sit here and listen to someone attack my family with lies and hatred. My mother is 75 years old and has worked her entire life to help people. She doesn't deserve to be called names on national television by someone who doesn't even know her. The simple humanity in his words made Joy's attack look even more cruel and pointless. Alyssa Farah Griffin stood up from her chair, something that never happened during a show. Joy, you need to apologize right now, Alyssa said firmly. What you just said was disgusting and completely inappropriate. Elon's family has nothing to do with any policy disagreements you might have. Joy looked around the table, finally seeming to understand that she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The other hosts were all staring at her with expressions ranging from disappointment to outright disgust. The studio audience remained silent, but their body language spoke volumes. Many were shaking their heads in disbelief. Maybe I went too far, Joy mumbled, but even her apology sounded half-hearted and defensive. Maybe? Whoopi's voice was like ice. Joy, you just personally attacked a guest family on live television. This isn't about politics or policy anymore. This is about basic human decency, and you just threw it out the window. Elon began walking toward the exit, but before he could leave, something unexpected happened. The studio audience began to applaud. It started with just a few people, but quickly grew into thunderous, sustained applause. They weren't just clapping, they were standing, giving Elon Musk a standing ovation while Joy Behar stood alone at the table, abandoned by her co-hosts and rejected by the audience. The applause continued for nearly a full minute, with shouts of, "We're sorry," and "You didn't deserve that," coming from various audience members. Elon paused at the exit and turned back to acknowledge the crowd with a small wave and a sad smile. "Thank you," he said to the audience. "I hope we can have better conversations in the future." As the applause finally died down, Joy sank back into her chair, looking smaller and more isolated than anyone had ever seen her. The other hosts were still standing, creating a visual that perfectly captured the moment. Joy alone at the table, while everyone else stood in solidarity with the man she had just attacked. Whoopi walked over to where Elon stood near the exit. "Elon, on behalf of The View and everyone here except one person, I want to apologize. What just happened is not what this show represents. We invited you here as our guest, and you deserve to be treated with respect." "I appreciate that, Whoopi," Elon replied quietly. "I know this isn't easy for you either." Sarah Haynes joined Whoopi near the exit. "I'm so sorry, Elon. I was looking forward to talking about your work with renewable energy and space exploration. That's the conversation America deserved to hear. And we were learning so much," Sunny Hostin added, also approaching the group. "Your vision for the future is exactly what we should be discussing, not personal attacks and hatred." Joy remained seated at the table, isolated and silent, as her co-hosts continued to distance themselves from her actions. The cameras captured every moment of her isolation, creating images that would be replayed millions of times in the coming hours. Alyssa Farah Griffin was the last to speak, and her words carried special weight given her political background. "Elon, I've worked in politics my entire career, and I've seen a lot of ugly moments. But what just happened here was beyond anything I've ever witnessed in professional discourse. You handled it with more grace than anyone could have expected. Sometimes the most important thing is how we respond to hate," Elon said simply. "I choose not to respond with more hate." His words seemed to make Joy's outburst look even more petty and cruel by comparison. The moral contrast was stark and undeniable. Here was a man who had been viciously attacked, responding with dignity and wisdom, while his attacker sat alone, abandoned by everyone around her. Whoopi turned to face the cameras directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not how we conduct interviews on The View. What you just witnessed was completely unacceptable, and it does not represent the values of this show or this network. But as Elon finally walked off the stage, the damage to the View's reputation was already spreading beyond the studio. Social media was exploding with clips of Joy's outburst, and the reaction was swift and brutal. Within minutes, hashtags calling for Joy's firing were trending worldwide. The remaining hosts stood in awkward silence as the producers scrambled to figure out how to end the show. Joy remained seated at the table, staring down at her hands, finally understanding that her 30-second outburst had just destroyed everything she had built over her decades in television. The episode would end there, but the consequences were just beginning. In trying to destroy Elon Musk, Joy Behar had instead destroyed herself, proving that sometimes the most powerful response to hatred is simply maintaining your dignity while your attacker reveals their true character to the world. The studio audience filed out in stunned silence, knowing they had witnessed the end of an era in daytime television.